3, 2, 1.
Well, what's going on, friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Metaverse Church podcast. I hope that you had an amazing week. Goose, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. You and I were talking off air before we hit that record button that I was saying how sharp you're looking right now.
Just how I lounge about the house, really.
Dressed to the nines all the time. You never know who's going to come walking in. Got to be looking your best
You
all the
gotta
time.
be ready.
That's it. That's good. Well, I'm over here. I mean, this is what I loved about the COVID, Zoom, working from home era. You just never knew what was going on from here down. Right? You just never knew. And I'm not going to tell you. So
I think you knew.
Maybe. You let your mind run wild. When Altspace was a thing, we didn't have to worry about that either because we didn't have anything from here down. So now you had to start worrying about like your pants game and virtual reality all of a sudden. You're like, man, all right, I got to figure out, do I look good in these jeans? Does this make my avatar butt look big? I don't know. Well, yeah, once again, welcome back, everybody. So we left you all last week, just letting you know that we're going to be talking about, well, I think we told you. Goose, you and I have so many conversations off air that I have no idea what actually was said in the podcast versus what you and I just say to each other. So I guess I'll say it this way. We are talking about small groups within virtual reality in today's podcast. Us at Lakeland, I actually reached out to Goose not too long ago, probably about a month and a half ago. And I asked like, hey, if you were to like boil down, what is like the one thing that Lakeland does really well within the VR platforms or whatnot? Goose, you said to me, just the groups that we run a whole bunch of different groups in there. Which was super like fun to hear because that's actually what I came in as with Lakeland, was to be the small group pastor. So to kind of hear that DNA has bled into that environment was great and was actually one of our heartbeats as Lakeland got into this, where we just said, hey, let's hop in. And if nothing else, if we get a small group out of it, we would consider it a win. And that was all part of our 6-month trial that started over 2 years ago this past week. So we are celebrating officially. Our soft launch happened 2 years ago this week. And as we head into Easter, we will officially be celebrating 2 years of Lakeland in the metaverse. So,
wow, congrats.
Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that it's been 2 years already. And man, I feel like so much has changed and not a lot has changed all at the same time. And any of us who are familiar with digital type ministry, especially metaverse ministry, knows a lot has changed in 2 years and changes all the time. So, but yeah, so for this episode, we're talking about small groups. So we're going to kind of talk about what it is that we do, Cornerstone and Lakeland VR. And then we're going to talk about one that I'm really focused in on at this point, which is going to be really an odd topic for me as an individual because it's something that I don't dabble in at all. But I actually think, and I told Goose off air that he has he can argue against this point if he feels that I'm way off base, and I totally could be, and I'm fine with that. But so yeah, we're talking about small groups. So Goose, do you want to take it? Like, how does Cornerstone go about small groups within the metaverse?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can lead off. I don't know that I would say that there is a specific articulated policy. Our goal is to have any groups that are viable and will affect spiritual growth for the people that are in it. And so, as far as metaverse groups go, we have had some groups that are more topic based, more like kind of teaching based. And so I don't know if they would necessarily fit like what we would think of as a traditional small group, which is, sort of that, like, doing life together sort of thing. Is more like kind of Bible studies or teaching, but in the metaverse things are a little bit more fluid. So we've certainly have had some of those, and those sort of come and go as the the season warrants, as the group, warrants. But then we do have, we do have one small group that has been going for over a year and a half, and I would venture to say that we're probably not far from the 2-year mark with that group. That's Angel's Life Group, which is a case study unto itself, in my opinion, because it has, it started as a traditional small group, and we've had so many discussions about it because of the nature of what has happened with it. So, happy to dive into that if it makes sense. But, Angel Small Group is for us the sort of our kind of shining example of what a small group can be in the metaverse. But beyond that, we have groups. We have a group, I would call it, that our Stuart runs in VR Chat on Thursdays, which is more of a worship and Bible reading. And so would we call that a small group? Again, traditionally, no. But is it a small group? Yeah, very much. Like many of the same people show up on a weekly basis, some attrition, of course. But he has been running that for a while, and it's really a powerful thing too. And so, so really for us, just, sort of what the landscape looks like is we've had a number of groups come and go. Those teaching groups, to just, to give the shout out to Tom, who has been so faithful in leading those types of groups. Then Angels Life Group is what we would call it. That's just been rocking and rolling, has been a force unto itself. And then again, I'll say our Stuart has had his, the Thursday worship, but then he has had a number of groups that, when the people come and go. So besides that, and just to kind of round it off, and I'll end with this, is we also have focused very much, I will say I have focused very much less on the small group model and more on the discipleship group model, which once again, maybe is splitting hairs, but I still think it's in the same vein. And so we've had quite a few discipleship groups that have, for the purpose of raising up a disciple to go be sent to raise up more disciples, make disciple makers is the kind of, that's the idea. And so, those, depending on how you want to characterize them, those have been incredibly successful. And, I'd have to look at the chart, but, we're definitely layers down in terms of looking at someone who is discipling another person and being like, oh yeah, they were discipled by them, and that person was discipled by that person. And we've got, we've essentially got like discipleship grandchildren and great grandchildren at this point, which is super sweet. So, yeah, so that's kind of the landscape. I'll throw it back to you because I'm kind of curious how you guys see it, and also curious whether you would group some of these other things into the small group umbrella, or if you prefer to keep them separate.
Yeah, so I'll start there actually. So as time has just gone on for us, we just kind of said, let's no holds bar this thing and just say, if you want to lead any kind of discussion event within virtual reality that is ultimately going to point people towards Jesus, we will consider that a group. Yeah. So one of ours that's been going on for probably over a year at this point, and probably the most consistent one that we've had, as one of my leaders, Jerry, he runs Bible trivia on Tuesday nights. And we consider that a group. Yeah. So, just he runs 2 different sessions back to back of each other. And they're the exact same thing. And what has been sweet, I've hopped in on a couple of them. And what's sweet to see is like, there are some people that they show up to the first one and they have a fantastic time, that they stick around for the second session, even though they know it's going to be the same questions, same answers, just to kind of establish a welcoming, warm environment for all the new people that are popping in the middle of it. So we've had Bible trivia. We've had a guy who's a part of our team that he's ran two different types of Bible studies. Just like simple material that's out there that he took and ran with it. I've ran a couple of different studies myself. The one that I've ran for the most part consistently, besides for some hit and miss type stuff here and there, Alpha. I've been running Alpha in what was All Space. So we're now running it in big screen, and we'll eventually bring it into spatial once we kind of see a bigger user base grow build out in that one. But it's just been sweet, and our philosophy to it is not only can anything be a group, anything, like there are still kind of like some parameters that we have to put on there, but we leave everything open. So these aren't groups that are designed for people who call Lakeland VR home, but we see them as great outreach opportunities to kind of infiltrate the VR community of whatever platform that we're on, which for us, I think it has kind of become more of the philosophy to how we do small group ministry within virtual reality, which I think is almost countercultural to what the traditional church typically does, right? So
100%.
The typical church would say, here's our building, here is our corporate gathering of believers, of people within the community that are showing up to this one place from all over the place to this one place. And then we're saying from here, as you take your next steps and you're growing and you're continuing on your spiritual journey, find a community to be a part of. Find your impact community, your small group, your me and three, whatever you want to call it, whatever your life group, find that to be a part of. And for us in virtual reality, what we're actually saying is find a community to be a part of. And then, oh, by the way, we also come here to worship as a corporate gathering for church service on Sundays. And the best way that you can find us, if you want to be a part of that, is each one of our groups advertises, hop over to our Discord. And again, on there, which we talked about in our Discord episode, we just tell them, like, here's where you can find all the different small groups that we have going on throughout the week. And also, here's where you can stay in communication and contact with us. And this is when we do our corporate gathering, whether that's in big screen, spatial, or wherever it is that we're doing it. So it has this really neat effect of like, we actually want you to find the community that you find yourself belonging to first. And then we'll see if it's just an invite culture of come and see what we have going on and who we found versus now go and find something to be a part of. So, we allow anything and everything to really be considered a group under that Lakeland VR umbrella, which is even in itself unique to what we do physically.
Yeah.
In fact, physically, we have recently made a shift where we even say, let's kind of take the restraints off of the idea of what group is traditionally, and let's kind of allow people to lead how they feel the Spirit and the Lord has equipped them to lead. So I wouldn't say that that's anything that was birthed from what Lakeland VR was doing, but I would say that it's something that God was already stirring as a common thing within the hearts and the leadership of Lakeland, that we all just kind of started moving this way. And because of that, we're even able to advertise IRL campus, our VR small groups. So if somebody who is looking for a small group IRL, they can hop onto our website and see, here's a VR one if you want to be a part of it, and here's how you can get in contact with those leaders. So it's just really like, here's that blend of reality, of digital and physical, all kind of meshing in one place. And the cool part about it is I think it's actually more being spearheaded from the digital side rather than the physical side of things.
Yeah. I love that, man. And I love what you said about, the way you characterize it about, sort of being flexible, not only going in, but also what I have found is, having to be flexible once you get going, because you think it's going to be one thing, and all of a sudden it sort of takes on a life of its own, and then you have to decide, what are we going to do with this? And that actually was something that we talked about quite a bit with Angel's Life Group, because the life group model, which is like you get 6-8 people together, and they're you catch fire, and more people start to join up. Before you know it, you got 20 people in somebody's house, and what does everybody say? All right, we got to multiply. I'm going to get on my soapbox. You got to go on your soapbox last week. I hate that entire concept. And I've been part of those types of groups where it's like, oh, everything's humming, and then all of a sudden they chop it in half. And within like a few months, neither of the groups are running anymore. And I get the mentality, but I don't see how that makes any sense to take momentum and kill it. Now, I do believe that we need to be a sending culture. So raising up a leader and saying, look, we as a group want to send, you are clearly called to lead, let them gather people and gain their own momentum and go. Fine. That's great. But to just basically like chop it in half and everybody, all right, now you're in this group and now you're in that group. I was like, that drives me absolutely insane. So Angel's Life Group on Thursdays, all of a sudden we look at it and they're getting, quite a few people, sometimes almost as much as we were getting on Sunday. It's just, you can just tell, hey, everybody wants to hang out. It's awesome. And so the discussion is, okay, we got, like the instinct, and I get it, is, okay, like we need another group. Let's chop it. And, like that was where it went. And so but the way that I saw it though, and here, this was what I mean by being flexible, was rather than restrict it to the classic definition of a life group, community group, small group, or whatever. What we realized was actually quite a few of the people that were going there, they were finding Cornerstone through that group. And they would show up and they'd be like, hey, this is a great group of people. And they're like, yeah, we hang out on Sunday too. And they're like, oh, really? Okay, we'll see you Sunday. And what I believed and the way I saw it was, it had morphed from the traditional life group to something more like the old classic church picnic, where somebody might not want to go inside and sit in the pew, but they got no problem going and throwing a football around, eating a few burgers and dogs and hanging out with people. And that used to be one of the things that, it wasn't the main, the only reason, let's just say, that churches would do these, sort of church picnics, but it was a big reason to sort of be a less, sort of intense way to invite people into relationship, and also show people like, hey, we enjoy the same things. Like inviting someone to church that you don't know, it's just a little bit easier when you've tossed them a touchdown pass and be like, hey, we both like football. Maybe we both would like this too. Like just having one single connection point, which by the way is going to really dovetail nicely into the video games discussion that I know you want to have. But that was the idea. So looking at that, it just sort of came to the conclusion, like, listen, let's not stick to a particular model simply because that's what we called it. Let's do what makes sense. And that was the direction that we went in, and it's still going. And it has had its ups and downs. I mean, some weeks it looks like a small group, and some weeks is the kind of way that it goes. And then other weeks it does just balloon out with all these people. And it's like, okay, we're doing it a little bit different this week. So anyway, Angel has navigated that expertly. She's had Paul as a fantastic right-hand man in that. And those two just have done such an amazing job in that community aspect. And now they're doing it in spatial. And it's still humming and it's still going. And so, but that I believe was a testament to everyone being a little bit flexible. And so to the extent, as as we say, like there may be some ministry leaders considering metaverse ministry. And one of the things that I think we would both say is, you better be flexible. Like your systems may be A+ in the physical church, and it doesn't mean they won't work in the metaverse, but you better be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talking about flexibility, the format that Lakeland's on right now, pretty sure we talked about it in a previous episode. We're on version 3, if not probably a different version at this point. But by the time that we fully went, like we doubled down on like the VR campus side of things, we were easily onto like our third adaptation to what does Lakeland in VR look like. And it was a constant take and give, and what does work, what doesn't work, and what worked this week, it doesn't work that week, which I've seen even with Alpha. There are weeks where 15, 20 people show up to be a part of a discussion, whatever that discussion is that week for Alpha, and then the next week nobody shows up. I'm like, same day, same time. I'm like, dude, what gives? So it is. There's a lot of, flexibility in there, and be ready to pivot when you need to. Man, Goose, I'm looking at our time for this episode, and I think I'm going to save our dovetail conversation for next episode, because I just believe that I believe it's going to take us a little bit of time to walk through there, just because of like some convictions that I'm feeling. So let me ask you this as we stay on topic with this one. And for everybody listening, watching, just know there's a part 2 coming, a part of this conversation. So you want to come back for it, especially as we talk about like gaming culture. But, I guess my question for you now is, does terminology matter in virtual reality? And I'll ask this based off of something that I heard back at Exponential a few weeks back, was this idea of, Jay Earhart, I believe, is the one who was talking about this. And Jay Earhart, for those of you who don't know, he runs a Twitch stream. I don't even think that he says that. I don't think he says it's a church. He runs a Twitch stream, and he just brings along Jesus into the conversation, and it's really sweet. I love this dude. He and I have never met in person until Exponential, and the first thing he does when he sees me is he gives me this big old bear hug, and I'm like, sweet, this is fun. So anyways, one of the things that he said that I took away from his presentation that I absolutely loved was just this idea of terminology. So he says, like, we're so used to saying, hey, we're doing a Bible study. And he says, now try to replace the word Bible with any kind of word before that study, and tell me if it's still, appeasing to you. He's like, we don't, his back and forth was, if you were to say, hey, do you want to come and do a science study with me? Your response is most likely going to be no, because I don't have a test that I need to study science for and prepare for. Like, I'm out of school, I'm out of college. Like, this isn't a stage that I'm in anymore, and I hate science, whatever. Math, I absolutely hate math. So like, if somebody came to me and said, hey, Stu, do you want to be a part of math study? No, I do not, because I hate math so much. Now, because of who I am as a believer, if somebody says, do you want to be a part of a Bible study? Sure. But for me, that terminology makes sense. I know what you're asking me. And his heartbeat behind this was just basically replace it with discussion. People will most likely be accepting of the idea of coming to a Bible discussion. We're not coming to study, but just to discuss. Your viewpoints might be different than mine, and that's okay, because we're going to discuss what we find in the Bible. So all that being said, that was his aspect of it. But when it comes to like IRL, type a small group Bible study, whatever, to like virtual reality metaverse, does terminology matter? And what it is that you're presenting to somebody that you're coming across in the metaverse, or you're trying to attract in the metaverse to come be a part of that discussion? Does it matter how you label this thing? Not to the point that you're ripping the floor out from underneath them, but you're trying to open up the doors at the same time. Yeah. Does it matter?
Wow. I've been thinking as you've been talking about how I would answer this, because I am warring in my head back and forth whether it does or it doesn't. As an attorney, I would say, of course it matters. Then, as a, sort of direct communicator, I'm like, no, just say what you mean. As long as you're you're saying what you mean, then no, it shouldn't matter, and everybody should just kind of get over it. But the reality is, it does matter to some, to many, and therefore I think we need to at least be mindful of that. I mean, ironically, even just using the term IRL, I've had this discussion that some say we object to that as a term, because this VR is real life too.
Sure.
And now, and so I'm like, well, I get that. It's shorthand for physical church, which is cumbersome. So maybe we need a better acronym. But anyway, you get the point. Like, does it matter? That terminology matters a great deal to some people, because it implies that VR is less than, which we clearly don't think it is. We're here and we're in the space, but it meant that to the person and the people that they said. As far as the way we communicate it, I think it matters, but we always want to be authentic. That's the thing that, I don't see the need to, totally wordsmith every last piece of it. I get the idea of saying book study might not be, a Bible study might not be appealing to somebody. And that I can respect. I would, just kind of playfully pushing back, say, if it's a discussion, are you really open to other viewpoints? Like if somebody wants to come in and discuss and say that Jesus isn't really the Son of God, but he's a great teacher, and that's his worldview, and like, all right, let's discuss that. Let's see what you have to say. It's like, no, we're going to shut that down pretty quick. I don't know how much of a discussion it actually is going to be. But within the context of what we are saying is, no, this is solidified, and we are discussing and doing sort of internal apologetics with an understanding that there's quite a bit that are majors that we are not discussing, unless you just want us to teach it to you. At that point, it's just a study. At that point, it's just, that's what it is. So, I guess that's sort of the idealist in me talking. Again, once we get to the video game discussion, the pragmatist is 100% going to come out. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm digging in on that. I'm more just kind of playing one angle of it. So, Anyway, I've gone around about. I would say that terminology does matter. I think as long as we are being authentic, that is what matters. And ultimately, I don't think it matters what you call it. I think it matters who you are when you invite the person, and the person is going to join you. And absent you saying something really wacky that you're inviting them to, I don't know that it matters that much.
Can I throw another layer on it? Like a quick layer, just to see if it changes your response a bit. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. When Altspace was still around, was Cornerstones running groups that were invite only?
Only discipleship groups. So I would say the answer is no, because those don't fit that. I mean, those are never open. Like, so taking those aside, the teachings that Tom would do, Angels Life Group. We had a few other people try to spin up some groups that, never really like caught any momentum, but they were all open.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because, like, obviously we've been running around this world filled, however you want to call it, with each other for a while. So we've got similar friends and whatnot. And there were times that I would see people on who were like they were in a world, they were in, an event or whatever, with other people that I like. For me, I'm looking at this, knowing where they're at, going, okay, they're doing like a Bible study or something, right? Mm-hmm. Men's group, women's group, whatever. But that wasn't ever up on like the main event board or the event board that I know of anyways. So that's the discussion group, or the discipleship groups that you're talking about, right?
Could be. Yeah.
Could be. Okay.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they may not have been associated with Cornerstone. My bad.
They might have been doing karaoke. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So that being said, though, this would be the layer that I'm throwing on top of it. Would that terminology matter based off of an open group versus like a private group like that? You know, like our like Lakeland's Bible trivia on Tuesdays versus like I see all my friends on a friends list. Again, I'm being very contextualized right now to Alt Space, knowing that it's not around, but I believe
we've got a lot of data on it.
Yeah. But to be able to see like a list of friends all a part of a world, an event or something that I can't get to that looks discipleship in nature that maybe I want to be a part of. And then I could send a message to whoever and say like, hey, can I come join or whatever? But does that matter then on the terminology for like what gets advertised? Because Bible trivia, and we've even talked about for Jerry, like, dude, just drop the Bible, just call it trivia, just because you're probably going to get more people who will pop into your event on that. But keep the Bible questions in there, but sprinkle in some other trivia, like make it fun for people and let them realize that the Bible and people who believe in the Bible aren't, stiff-necked, stuffed up, individuals, but we can have some fun. So now he does like trivia and stuff and nonsense, I think is what he calls it. So he just throws in a whole bunch of different stuff. But I think like that's where like an open platform to be able to show up to something versus like an actual discipleship conversation that's taking place. Like, is that where you should get specific with terminology for people?
I think, I don't know that there is a right answer. I know for me, what I would not want is for someone to feel hoodwinked and basically be like, oh, like this is bait and switch or something like that.
Yeah.
So I would probably set a wide boundary around that. But I don't think it's like, I think there's a tasteful way to do that. And then and of course, like anything, there is a distasteful way to do it as well. So, I don't know that I can render a judgment either way. Does terminology matter? Yeah. I mean, in that case, absolutely. I mean, I think we just need to we want to be careful on both sides of it. We can certainly be clever in it. And that's where, we run the risk of, putting someone off because they feel, like I said, they feel like they got a bait and switch. That's the one thing I would be careful about.
Okay, so I'll ask you one more question regarding this topic, and then I'll throw it to you for our fun closing question. What advice would you give for any person that's wanting to run a small group in virtual reality? Like, what is the one bit of advice you give that will lead to success for running a small group in VR? Yeah.
The one piece of advice, I don't think this is going to blow the lid off of anything, but well, okay. Here is the way. This is the way I would recommend a first.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way I would recommend a first timer. All right. So, the first group that someone runs, I would commit to a short season of doing it. And make that group centered around the theme or whatever it is, around something that can be accomplished in a 4, maybe 6 week season. Get a few committed people and run it. Go through it and wrap it up, conclude it, close the loop, and then decide if you want to do it again. Or decide, it was good, let's tweak these things. Hey, this didn't work. But that is what I would do for a first time in VR group, because it will give you an on-ramp and an off-ramp, and then a new on-ramp and the opportunity to do any tweaks. And that doesn't mean you even need to take a break. Like it literally could be, hey, these 6 weeks were great, let's do another 6, or let's do 12 now, or whatever. But I would define it and then see what happens from there. Because
That's interesting.
at the very least, your worst case scenario is you and 3-4 other faithful people do a 6-week group, and everybody by week 6 says, we can't wait for this to be done. You finish it. Everybody high fives. Success. That was a success. Otherwise, you might get into this thing that you don't know where it's headed. All of a sudden you have no light at the end of the tunnel. It ends up feeling like a life sentence because you're like, well, how long do I do this for? And it could end up being sort of a nightmare, and then feel like a failure without any real like closed loop. So that would be the way I would do it.
Yeah, that's good. What's interesting about that is what I'm about to say, like my advice, almost on the surface level contradicts what you just said. But at the same time, like you dig deep into it and you realize that it doesn't contradict it at all, because there's a way of doing it. There's a way of doing both where it works well. So I was going to say consistency, just having the consistency, like establish your day, your time that you're going to be running your event, your small group. And if you've got people who are going to be, that you already know that you've invited to be a part of it, launch it and get going. And I've always been a fan of just leaving them wide open, right? Mm-hmm. Any small group that's going, leave it wide open. Anybody who comes that just finds their way into it, invite them in to be a part of the culture, a part of the conversation, and just keep it going. But having consistency, knowing, hey, Bible trivia is going to be here Tuesdays at 6:30 and 7, to me just paves a path to success, more so than, oh, nobody showed up this week, so I'm just going to cancel it. And if I were to be completely honest with you, I'm guilty of doing that plenty of times. But we've talked about this even as a team at Lakeland of like, dude, we just need to have the consistency. Like, let's pick the day, let's pick the time, and just run it. And if in time you realize like maybe the time isn't as good as you thought, then after a while, you go ahead and choose a different time and a different day, or whatever. But that's in time that you would do that. So where it sounds like I'm contradicting what it is that you're saying of like these short-term ones, you brought it together really well when you said it doesn't mean that you have to take a break. If you're doing a 4 to 6 week thing, it doesn't mean that you have to take a week. You have to take a break in between, but you can actually jump right back into the following week, into week 1, or the beginning of a new study. It doesn't really matter, which has been the mentality that we specifically took with Alpha. That what we loved with doing Alpha was we can do the 12, 13 week course of this, and there was never really a beginning or end. Somebody can hop in on week 9 of this 12, 13 week course, and they ride out those last 3 weeks, and it was like, okay, now here comes week 1. Because we don't label it as week 1, week 2, week 3. We labeled it based off of the discussion topic for the week. So if you're around for all of it, you'll eventually realize that we're coming back to the same question. Yeah. But if you're joining us in the middle, you don't know what week 1, 2, 3 was. So it's just like, here's the discussion. Now let's talk. So it awards us the opportunity to just stay consistent while always having the material prepped. Like after we ran the first course of it, because Alpha does like these 30-minute long videos, I took those and I chopped them up into bite-sized pieces, and then we like spliced the conversation questions in between just to kind of keep that attention. Because what I was hearing from people in VR was, I don't come into VR to sit here and watch a screen. Totally get it. So let me cater to the environment and to the people that we're trying to reach. And we just turned it into, you can hop in the middle of this event, in the middle of the set series that we're in, and you can still be a part of the conversation no matter what. So to your point, I would say for the ministry that's wanting to start their first small group, maybe do the short 4 to 6 week on ramp, off ramp, but I would say keep the consistency. Learn from, take your analytics, your data from your first couple of goes at it, and then start making the tweaks that you need to. And go find other churches that are doing this already and hop in on theirs and see, like, is there a volume at a different day at a different time? Is there a need? Is there a spot that's not being hit? Like, there's so many platforms and there's so much that comes to the metaverse that just because all the churches are in big screen or all the churches are in spatial or whatever, like, let's start looking to see where else can we go to advance the kingdom, and you might find more success in those areas as well. So find your easy on-ramp opportunities and keep the consistency to go along with it. All right, that's it. I throw it back to you for our closing question.
And I don't even know if we've done this one already because my memory is so poor, but if you could have dinner with one historical figure, who would it be? And you can't say Jesus. In fact, I'm going to say you can't say anybody from the Bible.
Oh, man. So to be fair, I feel like we did do this one already, but I don't remember my answer. So I get to do it again. Man, any historical... Oh, no, wait. Maybe we did like a fictional character.
Yeah, we've definitely done fiction.
We did fiction. We did, right? Because I said like Gandalf. I was like, never late, early, rise precisely when he means to.
Wait, he's not a historical figure?
Oh, man. We're going to have to talk. Sorry, bud. Okay, so a historical figure that I would love to have dinner with. I have a few in my head right now. Oh, you know who? Okay, man, this is almost gonna seem like a lame answer. So I love history. I don't know if you and I've had this conversation. Yeah, I love history. Specifically, this might ease your concern. Specifically, U.S. history.
Oh, here we go.
I love studying U.S. history. I think if there was anybody that I would want to spend time with, oh, dang, even as I'm saying this, I just got another one. Okay, I'll stick to my original. I would say George Washington. Is that your answer?
Well, we're just gonna have to go together. We're just gonna have to go together. Nah, bro. I have obsessively studied George Washington, dude.
Okay.
Yeah. Can we just do a whole podcast on George Washington? Like, it's our podcast. We do whatever we want.
Oh man, yes we can.
Dude,
can
that guy he was a bad dude. That guy was awesome. Yeah, that's my pick. That's my pick.
Can I get my reason why though?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so History Channel did a docuseries on Washington a while back, a couple of years ago, I think. And the one thing that I don't think I ever knew, and I should have known this, was his major failure as a general, I think he was at the time, or a captain. He lost. Like, he got his unit completely slaughtered under his command. And yet he then comes back to lead the U.S. during the Revolutionary War. And, it gets kind of highlighted in, like, which we learned about you last week, you're not a musical person, but it gets somewhat highlighted even in the show production Hamilton, where the song, I believe, is Eyes on You, or man, I don't remember. But you get a glimpse even of Washington's history in that song where he talks about, like, I was once in your place where I was thirsty and hungry for command. I got it. I failed miserably. But the eyes of history are on you. Yeah. So there's a lot in there that from Washington, like just that idea of like rising from the failure, like learning from that to become something even more. And even somebody who wasn't even hungry for it at that point, he was like, nah, I'm not hungry for like any kind of leadership or, recognition or anything like that. I think is just truly amazing. To your point, he was a bad dude. But even his spiring that he ended up putting together during the Revolutionary War, like, man, I would just love to spend time picking that dude's brain. He was smarter beyond his years. So yeah. Great question.
I mean, just bold and smart, but also, through the fire and failure and come back from that. Anyway, I've spent many hours talking about the nuances of Washington, and so.
Can I just say that I'm just super excited that we both had the same answer?
Oh. I should have. Yeah, that's true. I should be happy. And now we can have dinner together. That'll probably be the first time we see each other in person.
That's right, with Washington. That's gonna be amazing. Just if he gets sick, if one of us gets sick, don't let him convince us to just drain our blood to try to get over the sickness. That did not work out well.
Yeah, and
So,
keep riding through the winter snow. Yeah.
oh jeez. All right, I think that's a good place to wrap up this one. What do you say, Goose?
It cannot be better than that.
There you go. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Well, to all of you watching and listening, thank you once again for joining us for the Metaverse Church podcast. As always, one way that you can help us out is by sharing, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. All those kinds of things helps get this out to more people. And this was a fun conversation as we were talking about small groups in the metaverse. Obviously, you heard us talk about it. We'll come back at this in week 2. And we're actually going to put more of a focus on video games and bringing small groups into that type of culture, which it fascinates me, which is really interesting just because I'm not a gamer whatsoever. And yet me personally, Goose, I'm feeling like the Lord's saying, this is where we need to go. So I'm like, okay, you lead, I'll follow. So we'll talk about that next week. If you want to stay in contact with us throughout the week, the best way that you can do that is hop onto our Discord. Link will be in the show notes. If you want to reach out to us at all, you can do that by emailing us at metaversechurchpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, we're also building a list for potential interviews. So if you want to be a part of the show, please let us know either through Discord or through the email. We'd love to have the conversation with you and bring you on and hear all about what God is doing with you in the metaverse. So all that being said, hope you have a great week and we'll see you next week. God bless.